Just as with everything in Excel 2013, we have a lot more choice when it comes to color and formatting. So if we take our employees large pivot file, you'll find that this is a pivot table that has down the left been grouped by county and then town, and then across the top by the departments, and where they meet we have sum of salary. So we can see first 24,500 for the clerical department. Now the point of this particular pivot table is to explore the pivot table styles that are available to you. Now these are accessed by making sure that you're in your pivot table at some point, and on the pivot table tools ribbon we are looking at the design sub-ribbon. These are the pivot table styles. You can see as you move between them, and you only need to hover, the color of your headings and dividing lines changes, and this will expand into other options. Look how bright that one is. So there's a purpley one there and a greeny one. I quite like the purpley one. Now dependent on the style you've chosen, you can turn off or on row headers. So if I turn row headers off, then my row header colouring is not applied. If I turn it back on, then my row headers are coloured in. And the same with the column headers. I turn that off and the column headings are not coloured in. I turn it on and they are, to match this chosen style. So that's that purpley one. Now I can also have banded rows. And you'll see that this particular style, banded rows, just get like a little purpley border, and then banded columns. And again, for this particular style, my banded columns just get a purpley border. But some of the other styles, when you choose banded columns and rows, as we have here, you can see that the columns and the rows then have a different background colour. So that one has banded rows, banded columns in grey, and here they mix orange and grey together, and then grey and grey, blue and blue. And we can come down to darker styles. That one's quite nice there. What we have there for the banded. Let's choose that one, pivot table styles, but only have banded rows regardless of banded columns. You tend only to have one or the other as you're trying to highlight. If you highlight rows, this row changes to this row, changes to this row, changes to this row, or you're trying to highlight the columns, so you're moving between, in this case, departments. So that highlights one column, the next column, the next column. Just makes the column easier to read going down. Obviously not with this particular green, but perhaps another colour would suit better, the red one. That works a lot better. So we can choose a built-in style from our list, and then from that built-in style, decide whether we would like the banded columns or the banded rows, or the column headers or the row headers. If you want to lose the styles completely, then you just choose clear, and we're taken back to a plain format. So the clear has taken away all the formatting, so we have no colours whatsoever. In which case we can either go back and choose another format, or we can actually create our own. But that's the next step. Now within this same section of design, as well as the ability to choose a different built-in pivot table style, we have some control over the report layout, and we can choose different types. We've got compact form, which is what we've got by default, outline form. You can see this expands things a little further, where the counties and the towns actually take up a separate column each because they're separate groups. Or tabular form. You can see there we have county and Durham. So this sub-town is actually on the same line, and same here for North Yorkshire. They're on the same line, and then we have a North Yorkshire total, so it works it slightly differently, but the default is that compact format. We can choose whether to turn grand totals off or on, or whether they're on or off just for rows or columns, and we saw that earlier in the pivot table options, but we can do it here from the design. And the same for the subtotals. Again, we can turn them on or off, but we can also change them so they're either at the bottom or the top of the group. So by default, they're at the top, but we could say, actually, let's see them all at the bottom. And that way we get little groupings. So we see North Yorkshire, 3 towns, and then the North Yorkshire total. So that's by changing them to the bottom. If they stay at the top, then they stay alongside the label. So they're a lot easier to see. Or we could turn them off because we don't want the subtotals, which we saw again before through the field settings. So that's all done here in the design section. Let's turn them back on to be at the top. We can also, for aesthetic reasons, insert a blank row after each line. And you can see that just tidies the pivot table up, makes it perhaps a little easier to read. And we can also remove that blank row. So these are formatting options. They don't control the data, they make no changes to the structure. They're just formatting for your pivot table, either using pivot table styles to introduce lots of color, or you're changing the layout from compact to form layout, inserting that blank row, turning off the grand or the subtotals.